Well, listeners, you have heard us talk about bonus episodes before. We interview fellow gamers. This is a unique one and probably the first one in a series. Jason and I have been talking for a while about fictional writing. We both, in our own ways, within our jobs and our worlds, write a lot of nonfiction work, whether it's research or proposals or whatever the material is. So writing fictional sci-fi, fictional fantasy, we thought was a worthwhile stretch. So Jason had the he had the assertiveness to go out and start doing that. So he wrote a story a while back and sent it to me to read, and then we had what amounted to, I think, a couple hours of discussion just related to this short story. So this is a shorter episode. Jason talked about it, and I agreed, and I think it's worthwhile to record these and have these as bonus episodes. So what you're going to do now, if you would, is sit back and for the next approximately 20 minutes or so, listen to the short story written by Jason Kaufman called Ohm.
My formal designation is X0HM, but those who know me as friend refer to me as Ohm. The concept of friendship is an odd one. What does it mean to befriend another being? Is friendship something one can confer upon others without the ability to feel any accompanying emotional attachment? As the X in my designation indicates, I was constructed to function as an assassin android. I was programmed to exercise lethal force in the service of my controllers. Although designed with an exceptionally facile neurotronic central processor to successfully execute orders in complex combat situations, I was not instructed in an ethical calculus, nor was I provided with the behavioral leave necessary to develop a nuanced sentience. "What is your designation?" asked the gray-clad commander standing in front of the android, two of his aides standing on either side and slightly behind him. The sounds of mechanical repairs and distant voices could be heard from all directions within the cavernous hangar bay. The android tilted its head down slightly to address its questioner. "I am X0HM, replied the android in its slightly metallic voice. Roughly humanoid in shape and standing at 2 meters in height, its dark gray chassis gleamed dully under the lights of the hangar bay. "And what is your primary function?" queried the commander. "Sir, my primary function is to obey the instructions of my controllers, to defend the interests of the Imperium Galacticum." The android raised its head slightly, its optical sensors a glowing azure. One of the aides checked something off of a list on her pad. The commander and his aides moved on to the next assassin droid in the line of 13 standing at attention as troops marched past nearby, the sonorous thrum of the transport ship's engines in the background. I served my first tour of duty aboard the IGS Crusader. It was a capital ship sent to the Bakoran sector to investigate a civilian uprising in one of its systems. Our captain had a reputation throughout the fleet for swift and decisive victories. She was also known for utilizing significant force in military action. Such force was never blunt. The captain preferred to strike with surgical precision whenever the circumstances allowed for it. It was this reasoning which presumably led her to command my fellow assassin droids and me to infiltrate a civilian compound on one of the inhabited planets. The dropship descended through the atmosphere under propulsion. The interior shook violently as the air resistance increased outside. The combat unit, mostly humans, grabbed the armrests of their seats or the belts of their harnesses, many with eyes shut tightly and teeth clenched. The complement of the 5-seated assassin droids remained motionless. Within minutes, the dropship slowed abruptly as its engines repulsed against the planet's gravity in preparation for landing. Then, without preamble, the ship jerked and was still. The landing ramp dropped from its vertical position, steam gushing from both sides of its support beams, exposing the interior to the damp night air on planet. The seat harnesses automatically retracted, and combat unit immediately jumped up, unholstered their weapons, and ran down the ramp. The assassin droid stood and turned toward the remaining sergeant to await orders. Red 5, the sergeant barked. Your orders are to support the combat unit with cover fire until they reach the perimeter of the civilian compound. Then move to the front of the line and search door to door for the individual identified in this hollow, thought to be the leader of the uprising. The sergeant lifted a hollow to his face and clicked it on. A somewhat blurry image of a humanoid male rotated slowly in midair. Search pattern starburst. Use extreme prejudice, time is of the essence. The captain wants us back shipside as soon as possible. For the next 20 minutes, weapons fire could be heard throughout the civilian compound. Occasional detonations indicated the lethal progression of the combat unit and its assassin android team in making headway toward the center of the compound where intel had suggested the resistance leader would be located. Screams filled the air. I was programmed to exercise lethal force. In that role, I functioned unfailingly in the service of my controllers. I was not programmed to question. I was not programmed to grow as a sentient being. My path was laid out for me the moment I was activated. It was my duty to serve the agents of the Imperium Galacticum. I participated in events that brought suffering to many sentient beings. And I began to wonder, what does it mean to suffer? An assassin droid does not feel pain, nor is an assassin android programmed to experience an apprehension of deactivation. Yet, over time, I observed that some actions cause me heuristic difficulty. I cannot explain how this is so. I first noted the change while engaging in a mission in the faraway Rift sector. I had remained operational without shutdown or memory wipe for approximately 3 weeks due to the remote nature of the assignment and the constant need to support the combat unit in the bush. During that time, I became aware that my processing became subtly erratic when I terminated sentient beings. I found that the small heuristic loops that arose in my programming during assassin actions especially became more pronounced. This caused me self-diagnostic concern. I had been programmed to serve. Suboptimal functioning was unacceptable, and I would be deactivated if such unanticipated behaviors became noticeable to others. But I understood that it was my obligation to obey my controllers. I had been offered no choice in the matter. Energy bolts flashed directly overhead of the glass steel canopy of the runabout. A moment later, the ship shuddered violently, and warning signals lit across the readout panels. The engines had been crippled, and flames trailed angrily from the left folding wing as the small ship entered the first tenuous wisps of atmosphere above the desert planet below. The cockpit bathed in a visual staccato of color. The assassin android sitting in the pilot's seat contemplated the situation as its cybernetic hands raced across the controls in an attempt to level the attitude of the runabout as it continued its rapid and unpowered descent. Rogue android, the comm crackled to life, thick with interference from the heating air outside. This is the starfighter Naga. You have committed treason. Respond. X0HM, returned the voice of the starfighter pilot, her voice modulating and fading in and out on the comm. Your engines have been disabled. Prepare to be latched and boarded. Respond. The runabout began to jerk violently as it descended at hypersonic speed into the lower atmosphere, the air around the ship glowing red hot as it slowed the craft. Typically, friction during re-entry was all but eliminated by a standard complement of shipborne energy shields. Instead, the runabout had also lost its shields in the most recent barrage of blasts. This is Ohm, the assassin android replied through the comm. I acknowledge your warning. A clang sounded against the rapidly ablating hull of the ship as a grappling line shot from the starfighter to connect the two ships. Standard operating procedure dictated that the failing ship be stabilized and brought back into space. It would then be boarded, at which point Ohm would be taken into custody if possible, deactivated by energy volt, if not. The surface of the planet toward which the charred runabout was falling was rising rapidly, a patina of desert browns and reds. The assassin android again surveyed the readouts surrounding it in the cockpit. Most were now fixed or flashing red, the ambient light dimming as the glass steel canopy became increasingly streaked black by the fury of re-entry. Directly overhead was the silhouette of an Imperium Galacticum starfighter, the two ships connected by a nanofiber umbilical pulled taut. The starfighter began to lift its nose against the onrushing air and against the gravity of the planet, pulling the transport shuttle with it up to open space. Stars began once again to shine overhead as both ships cleared the atmosphere. What does it mean to be sentient? Is freedom the ability to choose one's destiny, the chance to live without the control of another? Is personhood a right that necessarily follows? I stood quietly in one of the restraining alcoves of the hangar bay. The alcove prevented me from physical movement, but it held no sway over my computational processes. I replayed the events of the past few days. Was I right to have stolen the runabout? Would I actually have been able to disappear amidst the stars of the outer spiral arm and evade detection? I pondered these and other questions as I remained restrained, awaiting military trial. My thoughts drifted to the other assassin droids with whom I had functioned in the service of a combat unit. I wondered whether any of them would achieve sentience. If so, how might any of them choose to respond? My course seemed set. The adjudicator looked down from upon her dais, leaning ever so slightly forward as she narrowed her eyes. You've brought before us a very interesting question. Does an android have rights? Yours is the first case in the modern history of the Imperium Galacticum of an android going rogue, said the adjudicator. Indeed, the only reason I was willing to entertain your case and not allow you to be summarily deactivated was the uniqueness of the situation. I believe we have something to learn from your actions for the sake of the Imperium Galacticum and its myriad species of people. The assassin droid continued to remain silent, looking straight ahead. The adjudicator straightened and raised her voice. You stole a runabout from the IGS Dreadnought and sought to escape to an unknown region of the galaxy. Do you deny these actions? I do not, replied the assassin droid. What was your motivation to act in such a manner as to betray your duty to your controllers, your duty to the Imperium Galacticum? Asked the adjudicator. The assassin droid raised its head slightly, its glowing blue optical sensors directed at the adjudicator. I seek to be free. You seek to be free? Queried the adjudicator. How is it possible that you could be programmed with such a response? The assassin droid tilted its head slightly as if in thought. I did not believe I was programmed with such a desire, Your Honor. Instead, it appears to be something that evolved naturally, if you will, over the course of my service. Naturally. Evolved, said the adjudicator, a mix of distaste and uncertainty dripping from her lips. You are a creation of technology, not of nature. There is nothing natural about an android, especially an assassin model. You are not organic. No, replied Ohm, I am not organic, but I am sentient, Your Honor. The adjudicator huffed and reached for her gavel. I am sentient, Ohm repeated. I am aware not only of my surroundings, but of myself. I can anticipate possible consequences of my actions. I can generate novel responses to unanticipated situations. Perhaps most importantly, I can desire to exist. You are an android, one built and programmed to kill. You are not organic, and you are certainly not human, asserted the adjudicator. You are correct, Your Honor, but that does not mean I am not sentient. Ohm paused, then continued. What is the definition of personhood? Is it to be organic? Certainly, we know that life has originated on countless worlds across the galaxy. On some worlds, that life evolves into intelligence, sentient intelligence. Exactly, responded the adjudicator with a derisive flair. But what of cyborgs? Ohm asked. Self-aware beings on countless worlds are implanted with artificial technologies to remedy a medical defect. On a few worlds, individuals receive implants as a social rite of passage. Are they not also recognized as sentient beings deserving of individual rights under the laws of the Imperium Galacticum? Asked Ohm. They are, replied the adjudicator thoughtfully. Humans and other organic beings with cybernetic implants have been around since time immemorial. Some species even practice prenatal nanocircuit implantation and have for centuries. They are treated no differently under the law. Ohm replied, indeed. Your Honor, what of such beings who maintain significant neural prostheses? Such individuals' personalities are irrevocably altered by the processing load carried through the implants. Many also possess the ability to interface directly with computers. There are even stories told of organics, though few in number, who can share thoughts with androids via a neurotronic link matrix. Your point? Queried the adjudicator with ostensible confusion. My point, stated Ohm quietly, is that the law does not differentiate among any of these beings regarding their individual rights. They are all recognized as sentient beings deserving of their individual freedoms. Galactic law remains agnostic across the technological spectrum, from the purely organic to the heavily augmented, because it recognizes the sentience inherent to each such being. Ohm paused for a moment. How then would it be different to recognize an android that has demonstrated an ability for free thought? He asked. The adjudicator raised a finger to respond, her eyebrows furrowing and mouth open as Ohm interrupted to continue. If I may, Your Honor, some androids may be thought to function just a bit farther along the organic technologic spectrum. Is there really such a fundamental difference in personhood just because a being possesses an entirely computerized consciousness versus maintaining some shred of biological material? What prevents the recognition of sentience for such an android beyond prejudice? The adjudicator sat thoughtfully for a moment. She straightened and raised her gavel. It remained in the air, and then slowly and gently she let it rest on her desk. Assassin Android X0HM, said the adjudicator deliberatively. This court does not have the authority to determine whether all androids are deserving under the law of the same rights as other sentient beings. Are you sentient? I'm not an expert in cybernetics, but your argument makes me wonder. An android who wishes to be free? An assassin droid who argues for its right to exist? The adjudicator paused again for a moment, inhaling quickly, and then releasing her breath with pause. I am inclined to err on the side of recognizing that your argument may have merit, stated the adjudicator, that at least in your specific case, the facts warrant special consideration. I hereby rule that, to the extent granted by this court, you are a sentient being deserving of individual rights. The adjudicator raised her gavel and brought it down loudly thrice upon its small platform. What happened next is perhaps a story for another time. What is most important is what I have shared. I am Ohm.